قال الله تعالى في محكم الكتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومنهم من يقول ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Today inshallah I want to discuss the topic of dua, and if we try and translate dua into English, you can see that the closest translation is supplication. Supplication to our Creator, to Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning a request towards Him, meaning a conversation directly with the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And dua is one of the most crucial and also one of the most beautiful ways of interacting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with having a direct conversation towards Him. And when we have this conversation, we can ask Him for help, we can ask Him for assistance, we can request things from Him, we can request advice, we can request guidance, we can seek to have our needs and requests fulfilled through this direct conversation and through this direct connection with Him. But what you will often find, and if you question yourselves and reflect upon the times where you have made dua, how many times does it appear or feel as though you are having a conversation which is merely just a ritual, something which you are doing just for the sake of doing it? Sometimes we think of dua as just a list of words on a piece of paper that we should memorize and recite over and over again, rather than having it in our minds that this dua is in fact a conversation with our Lord, with Allah Azza wa Jal, as a means to request what we need from Him or what we wish from Him in this life. All we think of it is as some words that are to be memorized, some things which must be ticked off the list, some things which we can say, alhamdulillah, we have done this act for today and we can get on with the rest of our lives. As human beings, our fitrah tells us that we have a sense of duty to ask things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make our lives easier, to help us overcome certain challenges that we have. But this experience through dua sometimes feels like it lacks a substantial connection to Allah. Feels as though we are not really getting through to Him. Feels as though we are simply talking to ourselves rather than we are talking to Him. We finish our dua, and rather than feeling a sense of happiness, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of relief or peace or ease, we feel uncertain, we feel uneasy. We ask ourselves, has Allah really heard me in my dua? Has He really understood what I have asked of Him? Will He respond to me? Will He give me what I have asked for? And this feeling, which we can class as a dryness spiritually, spiritual dryness, is not the true essence of dua. Dua is meant to be an emotional journey. It is meant to be a direct, close connection to our Creator. That is the essence of dua. And what it also can mean is that we have forgotten the true nature of this dua itself, as what has been taught to us by the Holy Quran, as in the ayah, the verse which I read at the beginning of the muhadara, and as taught to us in our ahadith by Rasulullah and the A'immah. Dua. We can class dua as the essence of worship. We need to really try and understand the true status of it and how important it is. Dua is not a secondary act of worship. It isn't something which you can throw aside and say that it doesn't hold importance. You cannot say that it is not something which is obligatory on me to speak to my Creator. Otherwise, why do we class ourselves as Muslim? Why do we class ourselves as people who submit to our Creator if we don't even feel the need to speak to Him? It is something which is of the core of the religion of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, call upon me and I will respond to you. And in one of the other verses of the Holy Quran, He says, indeed, those who are too proud and too arrogant to worship me will enter into the hellfire in humiliation. So we have direct orders from Allah to go to Him directly. He invites us to call upon Him. He requests this from us. He tells us, speak to me and I will respond back to you. He doesn't say in this verse, read some words that you have memorized from a piece of paper. He doesn't say, memorize some things and then just say them every day. Otherwise, this is just a ritual which is empty. He says, call upon me. Call upon me if you look at the way it is worded, not just in English, but in Arabic as well, means call upon me when you need something. Call upon me as though you rely upon me. And of course, we all rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why do we not feel this need, this emotion when we make our dua? Why is it that we feel it's just a few lines to be said? If you look even in the live feeds from Karbala, from Najaf, and you see the people supplicating to Allah, filled with emotion, their eyes filled with tears. This is the true essence of the dua. Calling, understanding that you are a slave who has nothing in this world except his creator. And therefore this connection with him is extremely important. And we know that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are our practical guides in understanding these verses of the Holy Quran. Why? Because their entire life and everything which they said in their lives was a living, breathing dua in itself. It was a call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to try and live as best a life as possible. And the supplications which we find, for example, from Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam in Sahifa Sajjadiyya are some of the most beautiful, practical ways and examples which we can learn to try and speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. These supplications in Sahifa Sajjadiyya are not emotionless, they are not dry, they are not filled with one-line sentences which says, help me, Allah. No. They are filled with emotion, they are filled with humility, understanding that we as human beings need Allah and need Him to fulfill our requests and help us in our lives. It has a pleading with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a deep pleading and urgency in them. One of the ahadiths which is narrated by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam tells us something very interesting. The Imam says the dua is more important and more powerful than a spear. Of course, a spear is a weapon, is a physical weapon. But he is telling us that the dua is more important than this. Why? Because a spear can only help you physically in this world. It can only help you, for example, defeat or kill an enemy. Whereas dua, on the other hand, when it is done correctly, can change the entire destiny of a human being. It can avert all of the difficulties or calamities which a person may be too afraid to fear. This dua can bring down mercy and blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a divine way that we cannot even comprehend it. This is why the Imam says that the dua is more important and powerful than the spear or the weapon. And so if our dua feels weak, then the problem is not with the weapon, but it is how we are holding the weapon. We can say the dua without paying attention to it, but it has no real meaning unless we try and connect with the words in which we are saying. So how do we make our dua powerful? How do we have a truly successful supplication to Allah? There are certain principles and certain methods which are told by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam towards us. The first one is to have ikhlas, to have sincerity when we speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And importantly, for your heart to be present when you are reading the dua, not for your mind to be absent thinking about daily life. The first step is to bring your heart into the conversation. If you recite the dua when you are busy or preoccupied with something else, then you are not truly paying attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If, for example, you are speaking to your parents whilst you are playing video games, or whilst you are working, or whilst you are doing whatever activity, you are not giving them your full attention. And in fact, if your child is speaking to you, and you are having a conversation with them and they are too busy playing on their phones whilst they talk to you, you would say that this is a sign of disrespect. No? You would say that your child is being disrespectful. Now, if you have that conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your mind is not present on the dua, on the conversation you're having with Him, you're not disrespecting a child, you are disrespecting Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Therefore, paying attention and having the sincerity in your heart and the awakening within your mind that you are talking to Allah is extremely important. Allah says, so invoke Allah, meaning call upon Allah, being sincere, having ikhlas to Him in your religion, although the disbelievers will dislike this. Sincerity here means that the dua is simply for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are not performing the dua in front of everybody to be seen, or to pretend that we are some humble, pious individuals and that we are close to Allah. No, no, no. The dua is just for you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a conversation between you two, not for other people to look at you and think of you in a better light. This is a private audience. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, said, be aware and be cautious, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept the dua of a heedless heart. Meaning, when your heart is not present in the conversation with Allah, then it is meaningless. You are just repeating lines that have no emotion or connection behind them. And so this is the foundational beginning rule. Before you even begin to do the dua, take a deep breath, free your mind from anything which is cluttering it or clustering it, and then remember whose presence you are before. Remember whose conversation you are about to engage with. Acknowledge that you are a weak individual and that you have to go and ask for help from something which is much greater than you. Once you start thinking like this, you will notice that the dua and the feeling that you have within yourself will completely change. Secondly, you can personalize your request. The du'as that we have from the Holy Quran, from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, these are the perfect examples of how to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we need something in particular. And we should use them. And we should also use them as a guide. But there is no harm and there is no problem in speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about a problem which you specifically have. Everyone here has different needs, has different requests. For instance, one person might be struggling with money, the other person is rich, but he's struggling with his health. Each person will therefore ask Allah for different help. There is no problem in this. You should customize these du'as which the Imams provided and use them as a template after you have read them for your own personalized du'a. We have examples of this. The Prophet Zakaria alayhi salam, as we see in the Holy Quran, has a personal du'a. He says, my Lord, indeed my bones have weakened and my head has flared with white hair, and never have I been in my supplication to you, my Lord, unhappy. In the du'a, the Prophet Zakaria speaks of his own weakness. He doesn't say that I am a great man, I am a powerful, strong man. No, he says I am weak, I am getting old, I am frail. When we do the dua, we should be specific about our needs, about what we want from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about what help we want from Him. We should be vulnerable. We should be honest. We should tell Him what is in our hearts, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what is in the hearts. But what Allah loves is to hear you articulate what problems you are facing and to ask Him for that help out loud. Thirdly, combine the hope with fear. The Quran illustrates the balance of hope and fear. It says, invoke Allah in fear and in aspiration and hope. Indeed, the mercy of Allah is near to the doers of good, the people who do good. When you make the dua, do not assume that your dua must be answered in the way in which you want it. Why? Because this is arrogant. This is you pretending as though you know better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, don't be so hopeless to think that your dua will not be answered. Hope for the best from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's endless generosity and blessings and mercy is extremely important. But also bear in mind that some of your shortcomings or some of your sins might be a barrier and might stop your dua from being accepted. Why do I say this? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen tells us. He says that the one who makes the dua without doing any good deeds is like the person who tries to shoot an arrow without a bow. Lastly, be persistent and don't give up. If you have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a request, for something which is important to you, and within one day you haven't had any change in your life, this does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ignoring you. This does not mean that He has refused to engage with you or to grant you what you want. Allah Azza wa Jal tells Rasulullah in the Quran, and be patient, Ya Muhammad, for the decision of your Lord, for indeed you are in our eyes. The Imam goes on and tells us that a servant of Allah, the Abd of Allah, will continue to make dua until the response comes, and it will not be withheld from him. So, if you make a dua for a certain thing, do not expect that the answer from Allah will be yes, I will grant you the exact thing which you have asked for. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says no to a request which we have gone and asked Him for in the dua, because He knows that if He grants it to us, it will be bad for us. It will be harmful. Sometimes, rather than your wish being granted immediately, your dua being accepted immediately, Allah's answer is wait, because it will be better for you to have this in the future rather than now. And sometimes the answer is no, because I will give you something better. Sometimes the young guys especially, they want to marry a girl and they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very specifically, Ya Allah, help me marry this one girl. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't fulfill that dua, doesn't fulfill that request. Why? Because potentially there is something better further on the line for that individual, someone who will be better for that person. So it's important not to have despair and feel as though Allah is not answering me, because the hikmah and the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond anything which we are capable of comprehending. One of the important things which I learned from Sheikh Shubr Mahdi is beautiful, and it talks about the way in which we speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he told us that we as human beings, as Muslims, do not know how to address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the correct way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, the more ma'rifah that you acknowledge and address me with, and the more you understand the akhlaq and the etiquette of conversing with me and speaking to me, and what name to call out, and what time to call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the better the response from Allah will be. Meaning that we need to have the knowledge and the understanding of these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is the most generous. He is generosity embodied. He is the very meaning of generosity. So of course He is going to reply to an individual when they call out to Him. When someone says, Ya Allah, I ask for your assistance, I ask for your help, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always listens, always responds. And when He sees that we have addressed Him in the correct way, and when we have spoken to Him in the correct way, He answers us in a much better way. That's why we are told, when we want to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way possible, to go to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam for examples on how to do this. When we want an issue relating to our health or our family's health responded to or answered in the best way possible, we go through the way the Ahlul Bayt told us. When it is about rizq, or when we want sustenance for something, we go through the way the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam taught us and told us to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, as I mentioned, you can go to Allah in whatever way you choose. You can ask Him in whatever way you feel, and of course He will answer you. But there is a better way which has already been taught to us by the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. An example of this is if you're sitting in the room just now, and somebody messages you on WhatsApp, Salam alaikum, shlonik, how are you? I've not heard from you in a while. Tell me how you are doing and how your family is doing. You read the message on WhatsApp, you put your phone down, and then you begin to write a letter. Wa alaikum as-salam, I am fine, how are you, my family as well. Then you go to the shop, you pay for the stamp, you put it in the letter box. The next day, you go into the majlis, you see that person who texted you on WhatsApp. He says, you didn't respond to my text. Why are you ignoring me? The person says, no, I didn't ignore you. I responded to you. He says, no, look, on WhatsApp I messaged you, you ignored it. He says, no, I wrote a letter to you instead. Now, of course, the person did not ignore him. He responded to him, but he wrote it in a letter. Now, if this happened in real life, the person who sent the WhatsApp message would question him. He would say, why did you not respond to me in the way I asked you how you are doing? Why did you not respond to me on WhatsApp? Why would he say this? Because it is the quickest and the easiest and the most respectful way of replying to that conversation. So yes, the letter will come to him in a week, and there will be a communication between both of these people, but it is not the easiest or the fastest way to speak between each other. The same thing comes when we are trying to communicate between us and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says when He communicated to mankind, He did so through Rasulullah and through the Ma'sumin. Yes, we can go and we can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, please help me with my money issue. Ya Allah, help me with my health and get rid of my disease. Yes, we can go to Him in that way. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the way in which I contacted you, you should reply to me in the same way. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicated with me by revealing the Quran on the heart of Rasulullah, and if He contacted me through Hadith Qudsi, for example, by the A'immah, then the answer which we should give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be by using the same means or the same intermediary that He communicated through us. And that is why the Imams provide us with certain supplications, such as in Sahifa Sajjatiyah. These are the best ways that the Imam told us of communicating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the ways which are quickest to get the reply and to get the response from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Once there was a debate between Ayatollah Amini. Ayatollah Amini, the author of the famous book, Ghadir, one of the most important books which tells us about the event of Ghadir, tells us about the necessity of the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and which answers any of the questions or doubts that people have about the event of Ghadir. One day Ayatollah Amini is having a debate between him and a sheikh from Al-Azhar University in Egypt, from Ahl Sunnah. And the scholar from Al-Azhar University says to him, provide me with some evidence, some proof that the Imams, the A'imma from the Ahlul Bayt are ma'soom. And Ayatollah Amini doesn't reply to him. He doesn't give him a long argument, he doesn't give him proof by speaking to him. He says, I will send you a book. The book comes to the Sheikh from Al-Azhar just before the time of Maghrib. He says, I prayed Salat al-Maghrib, I prayed Salat al-Isha. Then I read the book all night. I stayed up all night until Salat al-Fajr until I finished the book. He goes back to Ayatollah Amini. He says to him, this one book that you gave me was enough to prove that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt are ma'soom. Now, you are asking, which book did Ayatollah Amini give to this sheikh from Egypt, from Al-Azhar University? The book he gave him is Sahifa Sajjadiyah by Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. And this is enough to show us that when a scholar from the madhab which does not accept that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt are ma'soom, when he spends one night reading the works of the Imam, he then has a complete 180-degree change of opinion, change of mindset towards the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt and regarding their infallibility. This shows us that the supplications of the Imams indicate that they have a closer and better understanding and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than anybody else, apart from Rasulullah. This is enough to show that they have the connection which a regular person may not have. Which is why when you want to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and when you want to make the dua towards Him, we use that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, meaning the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. Some people, for example, when you read Tasbihat al-Zahra, they say, why do I have to read 34, 33 times? Why can't I recite Allahu Akbar 100 times? Why can't I do it more than the amount which is recommended for me to do so? They try and even do more ibadah than Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. They want to outdo Imam Ali alayhi salam in terms of the worship, in terms of the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The answer which we have as to why you should not do 100 Allahu Akbar and why you should only do the amount which is told to us in Tasbih al-Zahra is simple. And I'll give you a practical example. If you have a map and someone says there is treasure, this map will show you the way to get to the treasure. If you want to get to the treasure, you take 20 steps forward. Then you take 300 yards left. And then you take 7 steps forward and then you arrive at the treasure. If you are reading this on the map and it says go forward 20 steps, are you going to say, well actually I will go forward 30 steps? No. Why? Because there are instructions for you to reach this beautiful treasure at the end of the instructions. Likewise, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down something for us to gain closeness to Him, meaning, for example, Tasbihat al-Zahra, it means that there is a hikmah behind reading it 34 times, 33 times, 33 times, not 100 times. There is a hikmah that we do not understand behind it. So if we want to reach this treasure, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to gain the closeness to Him, we follow the exact way in which the Imams laid out, not the way in which our souls or our minds are telling us that we should do. Why? Because those Imams knew how to connect and gain closeness to Allah. So the Imams are key here. They tell us how the dua works. They tell us the method in which we should carry out the dua and the way in which we should perform it. And therefore, it shows the importance of clinging tightly, not just to the Holy Quran, but to the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ as well. To finish, dua is the direct personal call to the person or to the entity which created you, meaning Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator of the heavens and the earth. It is one of the most intimate forms of ibadah or worship that a person can do. And so the dua that you make shouldn't be boring. You shouldn't fall asleep when you're reading the dua. It should be personal. It should be emotional. It should be pleading towards Him. And we should be prepared when we go to the dua for what we are going to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should have the courage to reveal all of the weaknesses which we have in our hearts that we want to be addressed by Him. And we should use, most importantly, the du'as which are found in the Holy Quran and the du'as which have been taught to us by the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. In the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, du'a is the shield, is the protector of a mu'min. It is the protection that we have. It is where we can find refuge. And it is where our proof of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be found when we realize that He listens to our du'a and He responds to it as well. And inshaAllah, we are granted the blessing to be amongst those sincere servants of Allah whose du'as are answered by Him. And we ask that He make our du'a be a source of comfort and relief in our lives. And to finish, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant victory to the mu'mineen and madhumeen and for all of the shuhada. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.